But the real trick to not experiencing stress within our bodies is to not release the hormones. And it doesn't take a vacation or even 10 minutes, it just takes seconds. And that's what I teach people. So you can actually use what I do all day long, anytime, anywhere. No one even needs to know you're doing it. And it's deeply to protect yourself. Like you're putting the oxygen mask on first.
Well, welcome back to the Professional Rule Breaker Show. I am your host, Kathy Walterhouse, and I want to start today with a question. Are you stressed? I want you to really think about it. Are you stressed? I know that there's times during my day that I do get stressed, and I bet the same thing happens to you. So I want you to listen in because we have an expert that helps business owners, entrepreneurs, professionals, and high achieving students who are struggling, and often secretly. We really think about that. Do we kind of hide our stress sometimes and our anxiety? So she helps with anxiety and stress and helps people achieve even more without the stress-induced burnout. She's the creator of the pressure-free method. It's an on-the-go stress management method that you can use anywhere and anytime. And I think we probably all need this. So I want to welcome my friend, Elle Ingalls.
Kathy, so glad to be here and so happy to share with your audience today.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. I really am, because I know that you can help a lot of people, including me. I'm going to raise my hand that
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
I do get stressed. And I bet you so many people that are listening today or watching today, they have the same issue. So I just want to kind of back up a little bit and just ask you really what is stress? Because I know everybody from like a CEO of, a big company to probably like a mom or a student, they have stress. So what really is stress and what causes it?
Yeah, I have a very narrow definition of stress. So this is how I go about sharing it with my clients. We have stressors and challenges and pressures. And there's no way we're going to stop those from hitting us.
Yeah,
This
unfortunately.
is life. This is life. And we're always going to experience some challenges and some stressors. For me, it doesn't become stress unless you've triggered the fight or flight stress response. And most of us don't understand that even for small annoyances, we're triggering too much of our stress hormones. And once we do that, now we're stressed. So I have a very specific definition of it on purpose, because I think people do get confused about it. And it's interesting too, I was in denial that I even needed my own method when I started coaching it.
Really?
I thought I was a pretty calm chick, pretty cool professional. I've been, doing a lot of amazing things in my lifetime. I'm just one of those super high achievers. I do a ton of things and I do a lot of things really well. And I thought I was fairly calm. And it wasn't until I began, and it's a story of how I started. This is completely organic and interesting. And it's like, okay, so I started coaching others and I'm like, oh, I think I need to use this on myself.
Oh, wow.
And Kathy, so much changed. In my breakthrough was about the 8-week mark. And I'll just share about that first. Like I was, you see my music back there. So I'm a violinist and a conductor. And my first big violin competition, my hands broke out in eczema so badly that I could never get a ring on any of these fingers. They were fat, bloated, and the knuckles were cracked and bleeding for 35 years. It was so bad that I was coaching a little 6-year-old one day who said, Mrs. Ingalls, is this like leprosy, like in the Bible?
Oh, no.
That's
Wow.
how awful it looked. And I was an executive shaking hands all day. I realize now every time I had to shake hands with someone, I triggered the stress response because I was so embarrassed by my hands. in 8 weeks, I'll show my hand for those on video so you can see it. Like that is a 61-year-old hand. It has no eczema on any of its fingers.
It's a beautiful hand, actually.
I can't even believe it. I can't. And skin is our largest organ. So I would get little bouts of skin acne, stress acne on my face, like little red bumps on the backs of my arms. My skin is in better condition than when I was 18. Like it's really incredible what can happen when you stop triggering these hormones in your body. So
Wow.
that's my definition of stress. I had a lot, and since I have to share this too, because rule breakers, like I'm a super big rule breaker, to be honest.
That's why I love you.
I always had dense fibrous breast tissues, like my whole adult life. And my mother passed away of breast cancer at age 68. She had her first experience with breast cancer in her early 60s. I'm 61, right? So at the 8-week mark again, my breast tissues completely changed. I have theories about it. Can't wait to work with an oncologist to actually prove some of these theories. But I couldn't believe the change. Stress fat left my upper torso. It just disappeared. So, some of us work out really hard. We're trying to be fit and we eat really well, but we'll still have like this stress fat in our torso. And also in that hump at the top of our spines, the base of our neck, that's called the dowager's hump. Stress hormones cause fat to build in these areas. Because if we were in a cave and couldn't get to food for 2 weeks because the tiger's still walking out there, we need this fat to survive. So that's why it builds in the center of our body and in this little fatty hump. So much changed for me. And it's been an amazing journey. I've been coaching now since 2013, coaching people as young as 10 and as old as 80. So I love to say that
So
an
there's
old
hope
brain,
for all of us.
there is hope, and an old brain can learn new tricks. And gosh, you can ask me some questions. I'll just dive in. I really want to share the method here. I share everything right up front with everybody. So
That's amazing. You're talking about the physical changes.
yes.
And I'm sure that there's internal changes too. But when you were talking, I was just thinking about how yesterday I met with a friend of mine, and she had been on like this trip. It was like the trip of a lifetime for, I think it was like almost 3 weeks. Actually, might have been a little bit longer than 3 weeks. She looked like she had had a facelift. She came back.
Oh, wow.
And her face, she just looked like she was glowing. Her face, like some of the wrinkles had disappeared. And, she had this great smile on her face. And I was like, wow, that's what rest and relaxation can do for you. So I think it's
Yeah.
almost in the same vein, right? When she wasn't
Yeah.
triggering all those stress hormones
Right.
for those 3
Yeah.
weeks.
For those 3 weeks. But now what happens now that she's back?
Mm.
So one of the things I love to say, because most of my clients are high achievers, if you tell them to slow down or stop, they do get angry. They do not want to slow down. They have more they want to create on this planet. And I'm talking my 10-year-olds as well as my older, C-suite clients. They get annoyed when people say, oh, just breathe, slow down, take time off. And some of them can't. Like some of the people I coach fiscally cannot take time off. And so what I've discovered is those are nice things to do. And it's great if you can. But the real trick to not experiencing stress within our bodies is to not release the hormones. And it doesn't take a vacation or even 10 minutes. It just takes seconds. And that's what I teach people.
Wow.
So you can actually use what I do all day long, anytime, anywhere. No one even needs to know you're doing it. And it's deeply to protect yourself. Like you're putting the oxygen mask on first. This was I just spoke to this thing called the Visionary Forum. And one gentleman came up to me at the end and he goes, you're talking about me, like for me. I go, yes, you're protecting you in situations. I mentioned some physical things, but then you're like digging deeper under the hood, right? So behaviorally. So when we trigger fight or flight, we move into what I call the B behaviors. We can get really bitchy. We can get really bossy. We can even bully people. You're laughing, but it's true. I'm raising my hand here.
So good. So
It's so
good.
true. You know, when women are called aggressive versus assertive, I'm sorry, but they really are aggressive. And the reason is they've triggered these hormones. Okay.
Really?
I'm calling it out. I'm
So
calling it
you
out because
think
that was
it's not,
me.
so if you're assertive,
Mhm,
um, because let's say you are either trying to make your point or stand up for yourself or something like that,
mhm.
you actually think that that is maybe bitchy
So
or
I'm not
something
going to
else?
say it's that. What I'm going to say is that, and here's why. When a male triggers the stress response, biological male, it takes up to 9 hours before their cells are completely free of the two different floods of hormones. But for females, it's an up to 24-hour cycle. So most women are never out of the what I refer to as the stress cycle of releases of hormones, because once we trigger fight or flight, now we're vulnerable and we'll trigger again and again and again, like 20 times in the morning, just trying to get
Wow.
to work. So everyone is under the influence of these hormones, and we see the behavior and we see the way society is today as a result. But for women, they are never out of it. And so, I mean, I've worked with C-suite execs who said, I would really love to promote this woman, but we can't trust her emotional responses in certain rooms. That's a game changer. If we can't trust people's emotional responses, how can we have them running a certain meeting? Or, you know, it's really a true thing. And so I've dug deeply on this. I believe it's the true reason for the glass ceiling is the release of these hormones. And I used to be so impatient. Come on, I'll finish your sentences for you. I'm an East Coast girl. Boom, boom, boom,
Mhm.
boom. Right. And now using this method on me, it's unbelievable how my behavior has changed. It really is unbelievable. And I work with my clients to not have to force or be assertive at all, but to be truly empowered. There's a big difference between forcing and power. And when
Okay.
you start living pressure free, you experience an expansion and a power within you. You never have to force your agenda. People actually come to you. You become a magnet. But if you're adrenalized, you're pushing, you're forcing, and that repels people from you. It it pushes them away from you. People
Wow.
you love, people you care about. Look at all the fractured relationships we have in business and in personal lives. There's so much force. And the stress hormones are the reason. Stress hormones are also the cause of all chronic mental and physical disease. So I've worked, especially some of the most precious work I do is with people who've been locked in anxiety for years. So I had a young woman locked in anxiety for 2 full years, which basically meant, according to her dad, that she really hadn't smiled in 2 years. When I taught her what I'm about to teach you guys, she she broke the stress cycle in 2.5 weeks, which meant she no longer felt anxiety.
Wow. That is really a breakthrough.
I had another young woman. She'd been hospitalized in an institution 3 different times before the age of 18. When she came to me in the second session, she goes, "Oh, I can do this." I go, "Yes, you can. This is not hard. What I'm going to teach you is not rocket science, but it is based on science. And it's based on the biology of your stress response. And when you get it and you start to work with it, you really start to live pressure free, which means no matter what pressures come your way, you stay free of triggering the fight or flight stress response for any reason, for the fact that you just burned your toast.
Right. Or anything
Or
that
the
may
traffic
happen.
is horrific and you're trying to get somewhere.
Right. Or you just got some sort of crazy assignment that you need to
Yes.
do or whatever it
Yeah.
might be.
Or the text message comes in, you have no idea what this person's really trying to tell you. There's a lot of text stress today.
I would have to say so. I have
Yeah,
to say so.
text stress. Like if you push the buttons and it doesn't work, or oh no, my
Mm.
camera's not functioning, my microphone's. People are triggering on Zoom like crazy right now because Zoom changed all those settings. You have to change your mic settings. And I have to really help my clients not trigger the stress response just because the mic isn't working.
That's right.
Simple little things like that.
Simple things. Well,
Yeah.
I have a suggestion for that. If they're having a zoo problem and they have a certain time they're going on camera, just do it early.
Yeah, do it early. Do it
Do it early,
early.
because there's nothing worse than you're turning everything on a couple minutes before you're supposed to be on Zoom and
Yeah.
something's not working, versus if you give yourself an hour and something's not working, you're like,
I
I
think
have
some
time to
people don't
fix it.
even know about the changes. Like it's when they change
Mhm.
the logarithms or change something, and then it's like, oh no, I can't get on. You know, it's like weird. Because that
Yeah.
didn't used to happen. You just pop on Zoom and whatever earphones you had in were boom.
Yeah,
It worked.
exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
So
Well,
I think some people are trying to mess with us, Kathy.
actually, I'm actually really excited about Zoom right now because I found some settings yesterday that I didn't even know were there. So I am super excited about some of the new features that they have. But I want to kind of just go back a little bit about something that you said
Mhm.
about
Mm,
how when women get stressed, you trigger the stress hormones for 24 hours. Because I was just thinking about this. So maybe
okay.
when you're sleeping,
Mhm.
you are not hopefully triggering stress hormones at that time. I suppose you could if you were having nightmares, or sometimes, like for me, I'll have things that I am working on pop up in my subconscious while like literally it'll come
Oh
into a
yes.
dream or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And so I bet you, because my brain is still working at that time, you could actually be triggering even while you're sleeping, or
Yes.
around the clock.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
is there when people are not triggering the stress hormones, they're out of it. And let's say their body
Just
has
reset.
cleared,
Reset.
yeah,
Mhm.
reset or cleared the stress hormones out of their body. What's the difference in the feeling? Like, how
Yeah.
do you feel?
Um, my eldest son, Hugh, and I were the first to really dig into this. And we kept waking up earlier and earlier in the morning. So one morning, I'm actually on the computer writing. It's 4:30 in the morning. He comes down, it's 5 o'clock. What 18-year-old teen is up at 5 a.m., right? He comes down the stairs, he goes,
Voluntarily.
right, voluntarily, right? He goes, Mother, Mother, I feel so calm and exhilarated every morning now. What is that? So those two words, calm and exhilarated, they seem a little like oxymorons. Like I'm calm, but I'm also exhilarated at the same time. It's not over excitement. It's like this really beautiful feeling. And I looked at him and I said, honey, I think for the first time in our lives, we're getting a real night's sleep, a true deep delta wave sleep, effortlessly. And so that's why we're waking up earlier and earlier, because we're ready. And we hit the reset button. We're in the night, we're rejuvenating, refreshing, renewing the way we're supposed to. But you can't do that if you've triggered the stress response, because you can't even get into a real sleep. And so that's why there's so much fatigue, and people are like wearing gadgets to see how much sleep they're getting. And I actually tell my clients, take them off. They're causing you anxiety. It's like you look and see you didn't get enough sleep and now you feel crappy for the rest of the day. It's like, no, just get rid of all that. Sleep should be the most natural thing we do. But you're right. If we've triggered, let me just share a little bit about the hormone flows for a moment, because it'll make sense to people. So when you experience any of these emotions, I call them the A's. In my class, you don't want to get A's. They're angry, annoyed, anxious, afraid, and anytime you feel ashamed, like how I felt ashamed about how my hands looked when I was shaking hands. So any sort of emotion like that, or memories that cause you to feel any of those things. So it could be tensions in your body, tensions in your mind. You have about 10 seconds before your amygdala deep in your brain is going to tell your heart rate to charge up and tell your adrenal glands to release a flood of hormones. We think of it as adrenaline, but it's actually a cocktail of catecholamines. So I refer to it as a cocktail, and you're now under the influence, just like any other drugs. You're going to be under the influence from that start point for, depending on the amount of flow, it's very variable, okay? But it could be up to 24 hours. Once you've released it, though, you're now vulnerable to look for threats. So anything could feel threatening. A certain email coming in on your phone, it's like, oh no, missed call. Oh no, right? Like, all kinds of little things can come in and cause you to trigger again. So you're constantly on this emotional roller coaster of the triggering or hormonal roller coaster of these hormones releasing. Few things about the brain. When we trigger fight or flight, our cortex and our hippocampus, which is our memory and learning, that all shuts down somewhat, which is why, you get into a social situation and you meet somebody new and 5 seconds later, you can't remember their name. You're not stupid people. What the heck is going on? Our hippocampus is shut down because most people, just even going to a party or going to a networking event, we trigger fight or flight before we get there. So then we go and meet someone. It's like, oh, I can't remember that guy's name, and you feel crazy. Like, what's wrong with me? And as we age, we think, oh, we're getting memory issues. It's not a memory issue. It's a stress hormone issue. Eyesight changes. It can be hard to see and hard to hear. So do you know how you'll talk to someone, it's like, oh, this is just going right over their head. Like they're not focusing on me. They're not listening.
Right.
That's one of the biggest complaints I hear from people is, I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard. I don't feel appreciated. Well, if the person you're looking to have that from, they are more than likely under the influence of stress hormones. They can't see you. They can't hear you properly. When they say, put your last name first, first name last on tests, do you know how many people get that wrong? Even though it's written and the proctor tells you to do it, we still do it wrong. It's because we can't even focus. We cannot lodge any of that information in properly. So think about that for a minute, Kathy. Think how much we're missing.
Exactly.
Think how much we're not hearing. Why people feel so disconnected and lonely today. Because nobody actually can hear and see them. And I was totally guilty of it. I would finish people's sentences. I was just so, on the go that I wasn't, and I was so triggered on adrenaline, I couldn't take in the information. So that is really huge. I'll just take a child, for example. There's probably parents listening here. I had a student he came to me for hockey, right? Play hockey better. He's 12, by the way. Smart little guy. So the second session he comes in, he goes, Mrs. Ingalls, this helps with school, doesn't it? I go, yeah, how do you know? Is this what he said? He goes, well, I'm a CD student. I have ADHD. But for the first time ever in my life, I got an A on a history test. So I looked at him and said, oh, you have ADHD, so you're brilliant, number one. Number two, you're not a CD student. You're an A student. It's just that you have test anxiety. And those symptoms of ADHD, by the way, exactly mirror the symptoms of triggering the stress response. There's no difference for any of those anxiety disorders, ADD, ADHD, GAD, PTSD. Those symptoms are the side effects of the hormones. So if we don't trigger those hormones, this all works. He ended up honors student, straight A's all through high school, beautiful scholarship to a college, chose to do something completely different because he stayed pressure-free and made the choices that were best for him.
Wow.
So that's just a student example that I think is so powerful, because as adults, we're missing so much. We've been triggering these hormones for so long, and it's causing some really serious damage. They call stress the silent killer, and we think about the heart, but every single one of your cells is affected by these hormones.
Oh, absolutely.
And because we're constantly on the roller coaster of these floods of hormones, it just gets really crazy. Lots of other side effects of that first flood, but cold hands and cold feet. A lot of people think they have a thyroid issue. I love to say, let's test first and see if it's a stress hormone issue. Let's stop the release of the hormones and see if you now have warm hands and warm feet. I do. I used to have freezing cold hands and feet all the time.
Really?
Yep. So that's
Really?
not
No,
really an
because
issue.
it's interesting because growing up, I felt like many times I had cold hands and cold feet. Could have been the climate that I was living in. I was living in the Midwest, so it was a little chilly, just a little chilly. But I have noticed as I've gotten older that that's gone away. But I'll be honest, I think I probably go at a higher stress level but maybe not than
you
when I
know,
was younger. I mean,
and
it's
your symptoms are going to change. It's really interesting. Some people experience some symptoms and another person completely different ones. And I'll mention that for a moment. So I usually do an intake and I say, okay, let's talk about the head. Do you get headaches or migraines? Or is it more chest center? Do you feel your chest tighten, your throat tighten? Is it even hard to kind of speak sometimes? Or you feel your heart racing? Or is it gut? Like your stomach hurts? Do you have IBS? Do you have any gut issues? I could add another one too in that area, and that's, do you have to pee a lot? So I was once working with a speaker and he said, oh, I don't have much. I manage my stress. That's how he put it. I manage my stress. I'm really pretty calm. And I go, well, let me ask a question. Just before you take the stage, do you have to go to the bathroom? He's like, yeah. I go, okay. And you went probably like half an hour before, right? And he goes, yes. I go, okay, so you triggered the stress response. It's going to make you have to go to the bathroom. So if you have frequent urination issues, it might not be a urinary problem. It may be a stress hormone issue. I say that about pretty much every kind of condition. Dry mouth. If you have a dry mouth before you're about to speak or anything like that, you've probably triggered the stress response. And water doesn't help. As a professional speaker, like you could have all the water in the world, but if your mouth goes dry, it's very uncomfortable. And that's because your saliva ducts are attached to your whole digestive system. That's going to slow down or stop in fight or flight. So we don't digest our food very well, which is why it feels weird. And that can get into some pretty weird food things with both genders, by the way, because if you trigger the stress response a lot, you might not want to eat because it's so uncomfortable. So we can go really deep on like any of those kinds of things. But I want to talk about the second flood of hormones for a moment. So we release this first cocktail, okay? We're under the influence. We're now very adrenalized. By the way, adrenaline is pretty addictive. I was addicted to it. I thought I was Superwoman. And then at some point, your brain and body is going to go, okay, threat is gone. We need to get this all back to normal. So the second flood are called glucocorticoids, glucose, sugar, and cortisol. We hear a lot about cortisol today, and people are trying to lower their cortisol levels. And I say that's a bunch of crap.
Really?
This is where I'm a rule. This is where I'm a rule breaker.
Here it comes. Yeah, here comes the rule breaker. Yeah.
If you have released the catecholamine floods, the first cocktail, you need cortisol. Do not cancel it. The problem is nobody's talking about the first flood of hormones. They're saying, oh, we need to reduce cortisol because cortisol makes you fat and cortisol, No, here's how it works. When we trigger the adrenaline flood, the catecholamines, that pulls fat and glucose out of our brain cells, which is why this gets funky, out of our extremities, which is why our hands and feet get cold, to the center of our body so we can fight or run away. That's its whole purpose, is that we protect ourselves. But we're just sitting still on the computer or in the car or wherever we are. So the fat builds here. We've lodged fat cells in the center of our body. When cortisol and glucose go out together, they expand the fat cells because they think we need more fat because we're in a threatening condition, okay? Someone's after us, right? So it expands the fat cells, which is why we have our stress fat is even more and bigger. And especially that fatty hump back there, that really starts to grow with the second flood. Glucose and cortisol go out and they have a great purpose. They're going to go out to our brain cells in our extremities to fix the water, sugar, salt content of the cells and power the cells back up with the fat. That's fabulous. Otherwise, we're not functioning very well. So we need glucose and cortisol to do that work for us. I truly believe, Kathy, we are divinely made.
Oh,
there's
absolutely.
a reason for all this stuff. And any side effects
works together
as
well. I mean, it's nothing short of a miracle.
It's a miracle. Yeah.
I have a question for you because as you're talking, I keep on thinking about this. So let's say you have started a new workout program and working out can be a form of stress, can it not?
Yeah. I work with a lot of athletes. you need to find the sweet spot of your athletic heart rate and not go over that, or you're going to trigger fight or flight, and then you're going to hit the wall. So you can know this by, there's some signs. You could wear a heart monitor and make sure you're not getting over a certain heart rate. That will help you.
Is it a certain percentage of your heart rate, or how does that?
It all varies. I think it's very individual. In fact, so
Okay.
much of this is individual, which is why I love coaching people, because everybody's so different. In my course, I have over 40 tools, by the way, to break the stress response. So, because everybody's different. But yeah, finding that sweet spot is important. Also, when you're exercising, watch out for loud sounds or anything in the environment that might pop you. For example, when I'm working with runners, they're in an accelerated heart rate to warm up before they're on the line, and then the gun goes off. That starting pistol will pop their adrenal glands. And now they hit the wall. Doesn't matter what race it is, 200, 400, 800, 1600, doesn't matter. 2/3 of the way through, they start slowing down. And so it's really interesting to watch the effects of all this. So if you do a new workout thing, I love to say, find the sweet spot and watch out for those environmental things that may pop you, because you don't want your workout to trigger the fight or flight stress response. Now in fact, my clients get a bigger bang for their buck, because that when the glucocorticoids go out, they shrink your bones and muscles, which can lead to osteoporosis. So it's like, in fact, I have to get back to the two side effects psychologically, and this is why people are trying to cancel cortisol. It's like, one is it can make you feel anxious for no reason. When I taught that to that young girl who had chronic anxiety, the light bulb went on. She's like, oh, so if I don't release the first flood, the second flood doesn't go out. I'm like, yes. That was life-changing for her. And then also insomnia. So cortisol is your wake-up drug. So let's say you get home from work, but then you see some email, and it kind of triggers you, right? It's like, oh. In that moment, that little bit of triggering is going to later either cause you not be able to get to sleep, or depending on the timing, you're up at 2 or 3 a.m. and you can't get back to sleep. So noting what's happening biologically to you, I love to say that your biology is informing your psychology. And when we get it clean, that is the magic. So when I shared at the beginning this whole stress response thing, I said, okay, so you got about 10 seconds before that first cocktail goes out. What can you do in that 10-second interval?
I want to know.
That is the key to pressure-free living. You can just ask yourself that question, Kathy. I literally have built, it's almost like 50 tools now. My tools come in 3 forms: body tools, mind tools, and life design tools. I'm going to give you the starter tool right here. First, map out some of your triggers, especially habitual ones. What do you habitually get a little tense about, have a little tension around? Mapping out triggers takes a while. Like I'm 13 years in, I'm still mapping them out. So it's like, okay, I see that now. And don't beat yourself up, because you may have been triggering from something for like 30 years, like I was, and I'm going, oh, wow. So don't beat yourself up. But in that 10-second interval, one of the best things you can do is a big motion, especially as an adult. One of the fastest ways to create new neural pathways and create a new habit is a large motion. So my motion is pretend you're out of the hamster wheel, get out of that hamster wheel, come around it, and turn it into a pretty little Ferris wheel, and just give it a push. So when you push, you can do it with the Kathy. So
Okay,
push up in the air. All right, you're laughing and you're smiling, because hopefully you don't go around like this all day. Otherwise, I have to find a different motion for you.
People are
Okay.
gonna think you're crazy too.
Right. I love it. I love working with teams, like offices, and then they're all going like this. It's very funny. So when you push up like this, your brain is like going, oh, what's going on? In that moment, you get to change your response to what's going on, because you just opened up this here to do something different. Plus you smiled. When you smiled, you release neuropeptides. Now, some people will say fake smiling doesn't work. That's because they're missing the 10 seconds. You've got to start that smile in that 10-second interval. Just the corners of the mouth going up release these neuropeptides. that allow the neurotransmitters that allow this whole thing to work, to keep going. So you're literally keeping the lights on in your head, so you can think properly and truly choose an appropriate response rather than be too aggressive, right?
Wow. I love that,
So
because you're right. It was like an interruption. It interrupted your pattern, whatever
totally interrupts.
that
Yeah.
that thought process, or that the way you were just about ready to, go into some stressor.
Yeah,
It interrupts it.
it does.
But what, I love that. But you got to give me something that's smaller. And the reason that I
Mhm.
say that is I'll give you this example
Okay.
in which, in one of my previous roles, I would be in this meeting, and there would be several of us. We would go in as an army,
Okay.
and never fails, there was always some contention that was going on during the meeting with the client. The client was always not happy about something. Luckily
Okay.
for me, it was never with what I did, and which was really fantastic. But they really would sometimes, I can even picture this in my mind. I remember this so vividly, being in a room, there was probably 20 people in the room. I would say 5 of which, or 6 of which, was part of my team.
Okay.
And the other side, they were just screaming and going on, and just, basically just throwing a giant fit.
Okay.
It was over things that I had no control of. These were different divisions of my company,
Sure.
that I was working for. So, there's a rule kind of in business, is the first person that shows emotion loses.
Right. Right.
So I was always the calm one in the room, very calm, interfaced with everyone, settled everyone down, literally calming everyone else down, and making sure that the meeting would go smoothly. When we would leave, I vividly remember the individual next to me left the room, and she started crying because it was that intense.
Right. Right.
But the thing is I knew that I was highly stressed in that meeting, because this happened 2 times when I met with these folks. Literally, I would have to stand up from the meeting, from, sitting down throughout the meeting, and I would have to stand there in one place, because the back of my knees hurt so bad that if I was to take a step, I don't think I could have taken a step.
Wow.
That's how bad it was. No one knew it was happening the whole time. I mean, as you said, that some people secretly, obviously I had some massive stress happening during that meeting, even though I had a calm, serene look on my face, calm demeanor, right? But I somehow had that stress.
Yes.
So what do you do in those type of situations where it is a really stressful, you're put into these stressful situations that you have no control over?
That's right. Yeah. Well, and a clue also was people were yelling or speaking loudly. So whenever we're encountering something that is like that, it's aggressive, right? I mean, people are yelling or screaming or whatever. You don't feel safe. We don't feel safe if we hear any raised voice. Children, especially, their parents will raise their voice just a tiny bit. They go into fight or flight. You do too. So here's the tool that I would use if I was in that situation. And I'm going to have you put a hand on your belly. You don't need to put a hand there when once you've done this several times, but put a hand on your belly and just relax your abs. We've been taught to hold our abs tightly by personal trainers and all these people. It's completely wrong. Is there any other animal that holds their abs tightly all day? No, there is not. They don't do sit-ups and crunches either, and they have beautiful abs. Okay, so the belly is supposed to be relaxed. When you relax your belly muscles, now I'm going to take you deeper. Take your hand and run it over your belly to where it tucks back in. And see if you can relax that spot. So that spot right there, above your pubic bone there, that spot is your safety, your deep empowerment, your money, and your love. Most women, men as well, every man I coach has tightness there too, but most women hold that extremely tightly, that spot there. And our trainers have told us to suck it in all day. Maybe our parents too. It's all wrong. It's so unhealthy for us. And if you relax your abs, you actually get a taller, beautiful, more elegant posture, because tightening the abs pulls us. And you want the whole front of your body to be relaxed. So if I were in that meeting, I would relax my abs, which allows the whole front of my body to be relaxed. And I've just told myself in that safety spot that I am safe. That I am safe. No matter what these people are doing, no matter what's coming at me, I am safe. I use it when I drive. Like if something crazy is going on in traffic, like black ice or whatever the stuff is, I relax my lowest abs. And that's going to also be that beginning of deep empowerment for you, when you can get that spot relaxed. So that's a very simple tool. You can do it anywhere, waiting in line, driving, in a meeting.
That's great. Nobody's going to know that you're doing it either.
Nobody knows you're doing it. Nobody knows you're doing it. And I've literally so many things I could teach. Here's another quick one for that. And that's if you take your hands and rub down your thighs, but do not rub back up. A lot of people will rub their thighs back and forth. Just rub down. Your nervous system has a directionality to it. I learned this from my body coach, Leila Veronica. Has a directionality. And when you work with the directionality, like a dog, if you go the wrong way, the dog bristles. You need to pat yourself just in one direction, which is why sometimes I don't ever get massages anymore, because they work up the body like this. I never liked them. I'm like, why don't I like this? I sort of feel relaxed, but not really relaxed. And then I learned about my nervous system directionality. I was like, just down my thighs, just down the tops of your arms. But in a meeting, you can just gently rub down your thighs a couple times, and it instantly soothes your nervous system down a notch to protect you from releasing these hormones.
Wow.
So, yeah. And you froze. Some people fight, some people freeze, some people flee, some people get fidgety, the pen clicker in the room. That's, the leg jiggler. I was a super leg jiggler as a little girl, like super leg jiggler. And it's because we've released that cocktail of hormones, and we have all this energy. What am I going to do with it? I'm supposed to be sitting quietly in church. It's like impossible. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Because I'm sure all of us know someone that does the leg jiggling, or is, or does this like a little
picking their
fidget to the
cuticles
side or something like that.
Yeah.
Or what about wringing your hands?
Wringing the
Maybe
hands. Yeah. Tension in the hands. I had one girl who she squeezed so hard she had scars in her hands.
Wow.
Like this. Nail biting, pen chewing.
What about raising the shoulders up? Have you ever, and I'm curious about this, because I have several friends, and me including myself, where sometime in our life in the last few years, we've had a frozen shoulder. And then one of the interesting things is that you come to realize that you're spending a good part of your life with your shoulders up, rather than just kind of letting them relax. And I know for me, it was when I came to that realization that I was doing that, I literally had to think several times during the day, lower your shoulders, just relax your shoulders. So I think that right now with the stress, there's so many people that are walking around and their shoulders are humped up and they don't even know it, because you spend your entire day like that.
Right.
Until probably you just lay down in bed. Maybe that's when you relax your shoulders.
Finally, right?
Yeah. Let them go. Yeah.
So I have a really quick tool for that to help with that. And that's from your shoulders down into your ribs, go wide. So don't try to push your shoulders back, because you actually close off your back heart that way, but just go wide. I was doing this with a whole group the other day. It was hilarious. And I was like, when you go wide, shoulders down, well, here, just watch me on camera. I'm going to do, and you can do it with me too. And people will see, like, note where we are right now, like how tall we are in camera, how wide we are in camera. First step, shoulders down into your ribs, go really wide. Just open up your rib cage and just really just go wide. Second step, Sit up a little and grab your butt. I'm serious. Pull your glutes back so you're sitting on your hamstrings.
Okay.
Because our glutes, think of a dog again. If a dog is scared, it tucks its tail. If you're sitting on your butt, you have a tucked tail. You're literally telling yourself to be afraid. Get your butt back, which can feel vulnerable because now you got a tail that's wagging. Okay. And you're more open. Okay. So this is wide, butt is wide. Now look at where we are on the camera. We're taller. When this is open, your heart is open. It can feel vulnerable. Like we tighten here to protect ourselves. We lift here to protect ourselves. So when you open this all up and elongate the front of your body and now relax your abs, you get a totally different approach. And people are going to feel much more connected to you because your heart is open.
Wow, it feels different.
It feels different. So your butt has two purposes. Your glutes to protect your lower back. So many people have back issues. Those muscles are supposed to be high up on the spine, not sinking underneath. And then to propel you forward. So now you feel just a little more action oriented too. Like I've helped people get in this position driving and they no longer get drowsy behind the wheel because you're in action mode in this position. Again, I have to thank Leela Veronica. She took me, like I always taught posture to my clients, but she took me to a different level with all this stuff. So my body tools have just gotten really great with coaching with her, just to get this, body in a frame that is serving us. And the shoulders up it's so painful. Like it's so tense and tight. But when you have anything like that, like the nail biting, the shoulders up, the squeezing, anything, I always say, or leg jiggling, I go, oh, you're lucky. You have a clue. If your leg starts jiggling, you can stop and say, okay, well, what's going on in here? Maybe you're going to identify a trigger. If your shoulders are up, just ask yourself, okay, is there something I'm a little tense about right now? That's a trigger.
I think exactly what you said earlier, that the body is really a miraculous thing. I think your body gives you signals over and over and over again, trying to tell you something. Like for me, it was the frozen shoulder or the muscle spasms I would get in my back or whatever it is. It was literally tapping me on my shoulder.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You have to do something different, right? You have to make a change in something.
You do. And what's so cool about this method, it is not rocket science. And I, like, my breakthrough was at 8 weeks. And what I mean by that is I went the entire day without triggering even once. So that night, my body hit the reset button.
So how do you do that though? How do you do that? I mean,
it's process.
Because we're so on the go, right?
We are.
You get almost
to
adrenaline junkies in many cases, right?
Yeah. And you get to stay on the go. That's what's so cool about this method. You will actually gain time. My clients, I gained 2.5 hours of quality time, productive time in my day when I had my breakthrough. I have one client who gained 3 hours. I have a gentleman, a sales professional. He gained 4 productive hours in his day. We are so messed up in stress that we're losing time, productive, beautiful time. And it's really just about process. And, with my clients, I don't even prejudge, like 2.5 weeks for one. The sales fellow, he had a breakthrough at 4 days and another one at 10 days. Like it just kept getting better. And so it's kind of the program that pays dividends for the rest of your life. Because when we can get clean, just like we get clean of other things, then the whole body and the whole mind get to work at a much higher level.
Well, and one of the things that you said in the very beginning is that sometimes when you tell people to slow down, they get angry.
Yes.
Because they think they're not going to accomplish as much.
That's right.
But it sounds like with your method, you're really almost going to have more time.
You do. Yeah. You don't have to slow down or take time off.
Productive time.
Yeah. You don't. And you won't come home exhausted.
And I think that's a clue, isn't it? Like if you're really exhausted Or let's say you wake up in the morning and you're exhausted. I think, again, your body's probably trying to tell you something right then and there. Because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there listening, especially if you're a high achiever, you're trying to do everything, that you go to bed, you're tired, you go to bed, and then you wake up and you're still
tired.
And you're still tired.
Yeah.
You talked about, I know you're a rule breaker,
Mm-hmm.
but what triggered all of this for you? I mean, you just, because it sounds like you want to go out there and you want to help people. That's really what it is.
Yeah. My own sons asked me to coach their baseball team in my little mental toughness tips. That's what started this whole thing. I thought they were crazy. Who wants their mom in the dugout? They did. My son just had me be the speaker for this huge visionary forum. Like, my children believe in me. And that was the thing that got this whole thing started. So it was completely organic. I fell into it.
Yeah, that's so great. So where can people find you? Because I know people are going to be really interested in talking with you.
You can just go to my name, ellingalls.com. And if you're like an action taker, I love action takers, you can go straight to my calendar by just going speakwithelle.com, ELLE. So speakwithelle.com, just book a call. It's completely free for you. You will never feel, it's always going to be pressure free. So you never feel like I'm trying to sell you something, but I can learn about you and see what of my programs might be helpful to you. And, it's a journey. You can see testimonials on my site of who's worked with me, all kinds of people. But I don't want to ever go back to the old me. I don't. It's just been a fabulous journey. I get to do so much more in every single day. And that's like, I can coach from 9 a.m. till midnight and never be tired, which is just beautiful.
That's fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
I loved having Elle Ingalls on my show. She really is a guru when it comes to helping you break the stress pattern. And I know that every single one of us out there have stress in some shape or form. So be sure to check this out and listen to the whole episode. And also go ahead and go to our YouTube channel so that you can watch it as well. So you can see her actions showing you how to break the stress pattern. And I want to thank you again for listening, because I adore all of you. And I know that for everyone that's out there, just remember what you have, the talents that you have and the experiences that you have, only you have them, and you can share them with the world. Doesn't matter if you think there's other people doing things in the same niche that you're in. Only you can teach and help people in the way that you can. It's like throwing a stone into the stream and watching the ripple. So go out there and create a positive ripple and make a big difference in this world. Thank you again, Elle. It's really been a pleasure. I adore you.
So great. Bye.
Bye.